Hi, you guys. Hi. Hi. Thank you guys all for showing up. I know some more classes are coming in later. But I'm Ashton, if you don't know me, but I know most of y'all. I'm really happy you guys all came, and I just want to do a quick introduction for our speakers. I know a lot of you guys here are in differing grades, but you're all thinking about like your future, your post-high school plans, if it's college, straight to career, whatever. And I hope this will give you guys some insight on like the range of careers possible if you're into like environmental science, chemistry, sustainability, agriculture. There's so much you can do, even if you know nothing right now. You just think it's interesting. So I just want to ask everyone to please stay quiet and give your attention to the speakers. Right now, we'll do some like introduction questions, and then we'll move on to like a question and answer. So if you guys have a question, just remember it, and then at the end, we'll do it. So our first question is, what is your name and your job?
Hello, everyone. My name is Ben Solomon. I use he pronouns. I work at the University of Wisconsin-Madison in the College of Agricultural and Life Sciences. I'm a student recruitment coordinator. But I work with Lilith himself. We're thinking about the future. Maybe it's college. Maybe it's about the environment. Maybe it's not. I'm here to show you all the things about how in the university and all the great opportunities that we have to offer and college have to offer. All those things as well.
Hello everyone, my name is Jane Epstein. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I also work at UW-Madison in the College of Agricultural and Life Sciences. I'm the assistant dean for student recruitment and outreach. So I work closely with Ben and our current students to talk about the 24 different majors we have. Many of them are related to the environment, whether that's plants or animals or environmental sciences like forest science, soil science, wildlife ecology, just to name a few. So those are the roles I hold, is talking about those things and helping people make connections or maybe learn about opportunities they didn't know existed.
My name is Randy Moonray. I'm a Singapore student for the careers.
I'm Kevin Slade. I work at the school district on sustainability/energy manager and work with the facilities grants team.
Okay, so our second question is, what education do you have? Whether that's in college, what did you major in, or your certificates, anything like that.
My degree, a bachelor's in mechanical engineering and technology from Northeastern University in Boston.
I have a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Wisconsin-Sea Point, where I majored in urban forestry and forest restoration. I've also been a certified arborist since 2009. I have a Bachelor of Track qualifications with 2 years assessment qualification.
And perhaps the one person notes, my bachelor's is a bachelor's in Spanish literature and international studies from UW-Madison. And I also have a master's degree in higher education and student affairs from the University of Connecticut. So I use both of those in my day-to-day working with college students and people thinking about college. And I do use my Spanish a lot to work with students or their families as well.
I graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Madison with a Bachelor of Science in 2 majors. One was Life Sciences Communications, the other was Environmental Science. And I had 2 certificates of focuses in Environmental Studies and Public Policy as well.
Okay, and then our next question is, how long have you been working your current job?
About a year I've been in this job. It's really fun, learned a lot of things, grown a lot as a recent college graduate, and got to use some of the things I've learned in school in ways I didn't expect to. While my current position might not be a ton of environmental sustainability focused work, I can still interact with people on campus
I've been with CALS at UW-Madison for about 8 months, and I've worked at the university for 6 years.
I have been with the city of Sun Prairie for a little over 2 years. Prior to that, I was with the city of Lake Mills for about 12 years. I've been in the field of forestry or landscaping since I graduated in 2009.
I've been with the school district since 2016, so I've been on the section.
Okay, and then what is your past work experience and how did it help you to get where you are and how did you get to where you are now?
There's previous to coming here, I was working for the state energy office, I think we still call it that. But I did very similar work to what I do here, but just on the state level, so in two smaller districts that didn't have resources or engineers and staff. And I was looking to do energy projects. Before that, I did some commissioning work with a couple of companies, one out of Boston and one here in Madison, where we would do somewhat similar, but not just education focused. We go into manufacturing facilities and look at energy savings opportunities for them as well. Hospitals, we did a lot of work for hospitals on startups. Before that, I was a controls engineer, so I worked with a consultant or a company down in Chicago that did installations of building automation systems. So the controls that kind of runs everything here as well. So we did design and installation of that. Before that, I was kind of a design engineer, just general HVAC. And before that, I was actually manufacturing. When I came out of college with my manufacturing or my mechanical engineering degree, I wanted to work on cars in Detroit, but I ended up in Chicago instead. So I kind of went down that route.
Following my graduation from Stevens Point, I worked for a couple of private landscape companies, kind of doing just landscape maintenance, hedge tree management. Then I worked for a private tree company over in the Milwaukee area doing kind of tree climbing, removals, pruning, different kind of stuff. And then I worked for the UW Grounds Department for a couple of years on the University of Madison campus, again doing more tree and shrub stuff, kind of a theme here. And then Lake Mills, I was a city arborist for the city of Lake Mills for 12 years, maintaining all the public trees that are within the right-of-way. And now I'm kind of the city forester for Sun Prairie. I am the forestry department. We just kind of split the forestry department off from Public Works about a year ago. So my hire was kind of the start of it being its own entity. So we'd like to see our department grow to be probably about, 3 to 4 full-time people. Right now it's just myself. I do get help from the parks staff, and Ashton, our moderator, will be joining us this summer for Parks Department, so she might be helping me out a little bit in the forestry department.
This is my first job out of college, so that's exciting. I worked at a bagel store for like 10 years, so I made bagels for a living, so kind of cool. Very important as well, but as an undergrad, I did a lot of research related to the environment, so not necessarily kind of work per se, or a job that you might think of in the traditional sense, but I did policy research, so I studied the recent Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, the really big bill passed a couple years ago now, and I kind of read the law itself, the very kind of hard to read, dense jargon of how it's written. I translated it into kind of normal English that everyone could understand and more kind of diverse and different groups could understand, and then analyze that for its impact on the environment and human health. So putting money towards this policy and this program, is that a good thing? Is that going to make a lot of waste? Is that going to help, improve energy efficiency or what, that kind of idea? So it was a really great way that I was able to take my communications and policy and that kind of background that I was studying at school and apply it in the environmental way, and the environmental science things that I'm interested in. I also did some potato virus research, so I studied kind of sort of food systems, but the interaction between potato viruses, the potato itself, and the soil that they grow in. So different types of, soil conditions and the impact on the virus, the different types of potatoes and the way the virus infected them. So if you've had a hash brown in the last couple of weeks, you're very welcome. I take full responsibility for that. But that was really fun and a great way, again, to get maybe with a more kind of lab science, hard science experience, in addition to the kind of social science, policy-based experience as well, which was really fun. And I did both of those for a year, for a whole year, working in those labs, so it was really great.
My work has been focused on working with college students, since that's what I have my degree in. So I've worked at UW-Madison for about 6 years, doing different jobs. And before that, I worked in New York State at a small liberal arts college, working as an academic advisor and supporting students there as well. And at the University of Connecticut, I worked as a career advisor, so I helped students in college thinking about what would they want an internship or a job in, or what would their next steps be.
Okay, what does a typical day or week in your job look like?
I can go. Depends on the week, which I'm sure is not very helpful for most people in terms of an answer, but a lot of working with students who come to campus, working with Jane, planning out events, hosting events for students who are interested in maybe going to college to learn about sustainability, learn about the environment, learn about the things they can do, not just in school but after it, and then also working quite closely with our career services team in CALS, so our career advisors, our employer relations manager, people who work with students and employers to help bring, companies, employers, government agencies, things like that, to UW-Madison campus and help connect students to them and kind of bridge the gap. Because does anyone here really know what career they want to do related to the environment? For sure? A couple hands. Is anyone I know I just want to work maybe environment, sustainability, not sure exactly what? Okay, a few more hands. Thank you to those who have participated. I appreciate it. Right, but not everyone knows exactly what they want to do, and our career services team will help connect them to what they want to do, help them explore that, but also help them figure out what's out there and what you can do. Because I know as a high schooler, knowing I wanted to do something about the environment, as a college student thinking the same way, I had no idea what my options were. I was I can build solar panels, and I can. Yeah, that's, I think, what I thought I was going to do. So I didn't really know the really wide range of things that you can do, and something that I really appreciated about, and I enjoy in my day today. My job today is kind of sharing all the different things you can do, and so that's something I think I do every day, is share the experiences, share what's offered, share the opportunities you can take advantage of.
Since Ben and I work closely together, I'll share two different things. Again, no typical week, but I'll share that often we're giving tours of the CALS campus. So tours of our greenhouses, tours of our dairy barns, our biological systems engineering laboratory, pretty cool if you're into machinery or interested in the environment and testing water and soil. So being able to show students like yourselves the different things that exist, even if you don't think you want to go to UW-Madison, I encourage you to come and visit the campus because there's a lot of cool things you'll see, and they may exist at other campuses as well. So that's one thing I do pretty regularly, and I'll share another cool thing. Last week for my job, I got to go on a bus trip where I traveled around the state with 40 people who work with me at UW-Madison. We all do different things. And throughout the state, we got to interact with some Ho-Chunk folks who are preserving land in the state. So we went over to the La Crosse area and Viroqua in that driftless area in the Kickapoo River Valley, and they showed us the land that they're preserving, and they talked about planting cedars, and they talked about, clearing the paths and what to keep, and showed us different plants and spring apples and things that were growing that I've never seen before that were just really, really cool. On that same trip, we got to go to a dairy farm in Fond du Lac. And at the dairy farm, they have one of the largest biodigesters in the county of Fond du Lac. So they're thinking about the environment, right? Because cows, when they eat, they produce methane. I'm sure we've all heard about this in terms of how sometimes agriculture is frowned upon because of the methane it's producing in our environment and in our air and water. And so they have a biodigester, and they are able to not only, with what's happening on that dairy farm, power over 800 homes in the community, but they're also giving power back to the grid in Fond du Lac,
And they're also composting 90% of everything that they take in, whether that's composting through the biodigester and selling off that natural gas, or whether that is composting the plants, using the plants again and again, and just reducing the impact that they have on the community. So cool things that I get exposed to related to the environment, and every week is different.
Similar situation. I don't really have a typical work day or work week. As we just saw on Tuesday, a major storm can come through, and then I spend the next 3 days doing storm damage cleanup. So I can kind of take any planning I had and throw it out the window. A common week would be resident interactions. If a resident calls in with a tree concern, I'll speak with them, go out and do a site inspection. Emails, so many emails. That's a big part of it. A lot of planning for the workload for the coming weeks. A lot of what I do takes, about a week in advance, kind of notice for a lot of things. Diggers locate, if we're going to be doing stump grinding, that kind of stuff. Then if the stars all align, I can actually get out and do some actual tree work, get in there and prune some trees, that kind of stuff. And I do some consultation for road reconstruction projects, engineering. I've done some development consultation for tree issues, that kind of stuff.
I have a handful of things that I need to get done each week. One is scheduling, so like the HVAC in this room wouldn't be running unless it's on the schedule. So every week I'm checking the schedule, seeing what's on there, and anything outside of normal hours or in rooms that aren't typically used, I go through and schedule all that. I also do utility bill tracking and budget projections for business services. So as the year goes on, we can tell where we're at energy-wise, dollar-wise, and see what we need for the rest of the year and what they need for next year's budgets. I do an annual presentation to the school board on our energy savings, our avoided costs. We kind of look at it as dollars we didn't have to spend on energy, and we're able to put into other things for the district. But then other than that, there's, like last week, we had a chiller go down at Northside Elementary. So we had to coordinate getting a temporary chiller rolled up, and now we're working with an engineering firm to kind of size a new chiller, figure out what was wrong with the old one that was only 5 years old, and kind of move forward on how we can fix that. I also I'm part of the sustainability board for the city of Sun Prairie. So I sit on that board. We meet once a month. We talk about sustainability things, how the district can help with those efforts. We have some new recycling efforts. We're doing pens, markers, mechanical pencils, that kind of stuff at the elementary schools where they use more of those. We're recycling used socks at the district service center, toothbrushes and oral care items. So we kind of work on that kind of stuff. I was at Eastside Elementary yesterday kicking off milk carton recycling with Sustain Dane. They're a nonprofit out of Madison that gets grants to kind of help schools and other people, businesses with their efficiency efforts. As part of the West High and even Token and Meadowview Elementaries, I was on the groups helping with the design of those, making sure that we're doing environmentally friendly practices when we're designing that. Those are all, including this school as well, geothermal buildings. So we're using geothermal for heating and cooling for those facilities. So kind of looking at what we've done here, the school's a little older. We've had some things that we learned along the way. So as we make our new facilities, we're making sure that we're doing things at least as good as here, if not better, moving forward. Other than that, I'm working closely with our HVAC techs and our electrician on any issues that pop up. If a teacher is warm, I'm the person that they call to see what's running, what isn't, what can be done about it, along those lines, and that kind of that fills up my days.
So who do you work closely with in your job, and when you interact with them, like what is their job and how does that relate to yours?
Sure. So as I was saying, like our HVAC techs, we have two great techs. So anything that I see, if I get a complaint, I'm on the building automation system. I can pull up every classroom in the district from my computer at the district service center. And if something I can fix, great. I can go into the program, I can make a change, but a lot of times it's not. It's a mechanical failure. So then I'm working with those HVAC techs to kind of figure out where they need to go. And then they're calling me back to make sure that everything that they've done is working, and we're kind of working that way. My boss is the director of facilities and grounds, so I'm working daily with him on any new projects. We just had a turnover he started this year, so there's a lot of onboarding going on and just making sure that he has the history of everything sustainability that we've done. I work with food and nutrition. We monitor all the freezers and coolers, so I'm working with them if we see any issues. I'm working with maintenance. We did some initiatives in the elementary schools where we changed all of the faucets, so it's all low flow faucets. So I would work with the maintenance staff on those type of things. And then outside, as I mentioned, I work with I have a counterpart at the city, a sustainability person there that I'm in close contact with, anything we can partner together on. And then I work with other groups like the Dane County Office of Energy and Climate Change. I work with them as far as opportunities, identifying funding that we can get here in the district. I gave a presentation at the WASBO, so it's the Wisconsin Association of School Business Officials. So we work with them as well, and if anything we can do to kind of promote what we're doing here in Sun Prairie, share some ideas. We're part of a grant, and I'm doing a presentation next week with Slipstream, which is an engineering firm out of Madison, a nonprofit as well. And they did an energy study for not only us, but 4 other districts, so we'll be presenting on that. And just kind of sharing the information, everything that works great here, we can share out, and then getting ideas from other districts along that way.
As I kind of mentioned earlier, our forestry department's kind of in the fledgling state, so I work pretty closely with the Parks Department crew. They give me a hand on any of the larger tree removals, any kind of other tree jobs. I work with, the city has a stormwater department who kind of maintains and manages all of our retention ponds, kind of creek waterways. We have a lot of trees in those areas, obviously. So I kind of work with them, help them, kind of consult with them on tree removal issues, that kind of stuff. Mainly, it's the Parks Department crew.
I work with a variety of people, mostly prospective students and their families, so folks like you. I also work a lot with faculty, so I think I'll talk a little bit about some of the professors that I've interacted with just in the past week and things they do. So I got to sit down and talk with a food science professor, and he was sharing that there's students doing a lot of research and some local companies making meatless protein, right? We want to be able to maybe consume less animals and maybe have some things that are healthier in our diets. So they're growing some mushrooms, and they're using, I think it's pronounced the mycelium. I don't know if anybody's a mushroom expert, but it's basically like the roots of the mushroom, right? You don't even grow the top. You can really just like start to grow the little stalk part and cut it off and use that, and that is a lot of the protein that goes into things like a fake chicken patty, or things that we would buy in the store. So food scientists are thinking about the environment too, right? Because they're thinking about the impact that maybe needing less animals for the meat production part of the world. I also met recently with a professor who studies community and environmental sociology. Some people refer to it as rural sociology. So it's not just rural things, but it's studying about how people and the environment impact each other, whether that's the population impacting the environment or, how farmers get treated. And so she's actually doing some courses on issues in our food systems and how can we make food systems more equitable. She's also doing some cool research with some local queer farmers to talk about the experience of, choosing to be a farmer and how your identity can impact that work.
Yeah, I think I work most closely with Jane. But other than that, again, a lot of prospective students, their families, visitors, hash browns all day. You're welcome. Again, you're welcome. Essentially, I also work really closely with current students. So we have some student ambassadors who are current students in CALS, the College of Agricultural and Life Sciences, who work with our visitors and our guests and kind of share their stories and represent the school. And so there's 2 quick ones I want to share with you. One of our students, Katie, She's also a life science communication student with a double major in wildlife ecology, and she's really interested in kind of the environment and environmental education. So she worked with our career services team to kind of develop her resume, develop like a cover letter, every aspect of her application, and she got an internship last summer with the Ice Age Trail. And so she was doing education. She did some trail work, kind of like, maintaining the trail, doing work in that sense, but she also did a lot of kind of visits and education, kind of educational events and presentations to a bunch of elementary school students during the summer. So she would kind of talk about the relevance of the environment, the maybe not just the physical relevance of this is our air, this is the food that we eat, the water that we enjoy, and all that stuff, but also with the cultural relevance to not just different groups of people, but everyone. And she actually is working with them again this summer, which is really cool. And then another one of our students, Maisie, who just graduated, she is a horticulture student, so she studies plants and kind of growing plants, taking care of them, breeding them, cultivating them, and so on. And she is actually working with the Chicago Botanic Gardens, and she hopes in the future, also doing a lot of kind of educational programming stuff there, but she's hoping in the future to become horticultural, or to work with horticultural rehabilitation, which is using plants both for their like medicinal properties for rehabilitation, but then also for like the really good feeling of when you take care of a plant and it works kind of idea, which has not been going great for me recently. But those are just two examples of what some of our students are doing. Again, more in the educational or kind of outreach idea of things, but also kind of medicine and health for in a lot of different ways as well.
So, what skills does someone who's in your position need?
I would say for my position and probably most positions here and almost any position you'll ever have, communication is really important. One thing I learned in college is that yes, I wanted to talk about the environment. I wanted to teach people about the science of it. I wanted to show people why I cared so much about it and maybe why they could care about it a lot and kind of work with that to make a difference. But a lot of people don't understand the science of it, or they don't agree with it, or they have different opinions, or don't know as much as I do. They didn't go to graduate with an environmental science degree, so they don't know what I'm talking about when I say the greenhouse effect or things like that. So learning how to communicate anything, maybe it's a really specific technology or a really complicated new resource or source of energy, things like that. Learning how to talk to a bunch of different groups, maybe that's your professor, but then also your grandparents and your friends and your coworkers and things like that, or the public. How do you explain that to them in a way that they can understand, and that is respectful and relevant and understandable? That's something I really valued in school and that I use every day. So communication, I think, is my big thing. And then also patience, not just in kind of the lens of communication, but also just with your days and with the people around you and, with yourself. Because I know looking for a job took a long time, and, sometimes your first choice isn't always what you get. But you learn to really appreciate what you do. I think it was a very happy circumstance that I am in the position I'm in now, because I've really enjoyed it. I got to share kind of what I am passionate about with others and how they can take what they're passionate about and do it and achieve it as well. So definitely be patient and learn how to talk, but not too much.
I think similarly, I'll add that listening is a big skill that I think you don't always think about it, that maybe you're not explicitly getting taught to listen, or maybe people don't always want to, list it on a resume, right? I'm a great listener doesn't usually show up on the resume, maybe more the dating profile. But I think that listening is super important, because something that throughout my career I have been doing a lot of is supervision, right? Supervising people, managing people. And that's another thing that you don't always get trained for. Some careers do a much better job than others of training you to manage people and supervise. But I think if you listen to others and ask good questions and also listen to yourself and, kind of trust your instincts, I think that will help you in a lot of ways, and it'll help you with these jobs that you're thinking about for sure. It'll also help you take good care of yourself, and that is very important.
I would agree with Ben and Jean. Communication is a big part of it for me, as well as obtaining that knowledge base, kind of knowing the science behind it, tree biology, all that kind of stuff. It's helped me tenfold in my position. Just being able to talk to the residents in the public sector, private sector, talking to the clients, just explaining what you're doing and why you're doing it. It just helps. Yeah, that, and like you guys said, communication is definitely a big part.
And I'll start by definitely echoing the communication. For me, I'm dealing with techs, and I'm also dealing with admin, and then I'm engineers on the daily, and then when I work with the sustainability group, it's a lot of like-minded people with very different backgrounds. So you kind of got to know the audience, and you got to tailor what you're saying to kind of have an impact on who you're talking to. For mine, my mechanical background obviously helps, but it's certainly not necessary for this type of degree or for this type of work. There's a lot of other things that you can do that don't need to be at the nuts and bolts level. So if you have that passion and you're organized, there's a lot of money right now in grants. I think Ben mentioned the Infrastructure Act. So there's just trying to find the money that's out there. So being organized and knowing where to look, that kind of stuff. And then, yeah, for me, the mechanical side, because I can look into programming, that kind of stuff, and just go line by line, even to the code level. That type of skill is necessary.
Also want to add quickly one thing. I think a lot of the times, or for me, when I was thinking about a career in the environment, in sustainability, and I think specifically it was natural resources and kind of energy and renewable energy, I thought, okay, I need to like really take classes and study and know a lot about renewables and energy systems and the mechanics and the science and the physics and all of that stuff. And that's what like I'll need for a future career. But what I've learned is that it's a lot of kind of the baseline skills that might not necessarily be super, super specific to maybe a career or job or a role or position. It's a lot of the things like, organization, communication, listening, being, open to learn. And I think kind of the point of having the background in maybe tree biology, having that science background and the knowledge will help. But it's really the way that you apply it and the way that you, can you effectively work with a team? Can you effectively supervise people? Can you write a grant proposal or an email? Things like that you don't think about but are really, really important. And it's kind of those like baseline skills that you can apply in each different way. So yes, you might study, and I encourage you to study whatever you choose to study. If it interests you, then that's perfect, and I think that's a great fit. But it's about how you apply that knowledge that you know. And so yes, I know about the physics of climate change and the things going on in the atmosphere. That doesn't really mean much if I don't know how to talk to someone about it, or if I don't know how to, put the data in a spreadsheet and then how to analyze it, right? So it's kind of the baseline things I think are also really important that I just thought about.
I would also like to add that I mentioned that knowledge base, but obviously tree care skills, which is something you can they do offer kind of basic courses on that, but that's kind of stuff you gain with job experience. So, but just wanted to add that.
What do you like and dislike about your career?
I'll go ahead. As I mentioned before, emails, so many emails, not my favorite. And then within the public sector, we talked about an important skill to have is communication. I see a lot of lack of communication amongst city departments, just kind of the whole process of planning a city park. People that should be involved in the planning process tend to not be, and so there's that lack of communication. It can be quite frustrating sometimes. It's just simple things that should happen that don't. That's the biggest thing for me. Everything else. She asked what I like about it. I said everything else. The actual tree work, getting out and just doing the field work. The resident interactions are always kind of fulfilling. Yeah, basically all that. Everything else besides the emails and the letters.
I enjoy the problem solving. So every day is a new thing that I come into. I don't know what's going to land on my desk or what phone call I'm going to get, but I don't enjoy getting the phone call, but once I get it, I enjoy figuring out how we can get things done or how we can fix things. I really like the group of people that I'm working with. So I mean, that means a lot in your career to enjoy. You're going to spend more time with them than anybody else. So you kind of have to find a good fit for you. And I like our group down in facilities and grounds a lot. I don't like public speaking very often. So I went into engineering to try to avoid being on a stage, but I end up doing it more. I like getting the word out. I like getting out what I do. I like trying to influence people to kind of do similar things. But as far as getting in front of people, like I lose sleep the night before. Yeah, but everything else, working with the guys and actually getting to look at things and see things completed, starting with a problem and find a solution and seeing how it works is the main thing I like.
Yeah, also not a fan of emails, for sure, especially when you get so many of them. Not all ones that might be super relevant to you, but they're still there, and so you still got to go through them. That's a big one. I think working with so many different groups and so many different people and so many, on-campus partners, off-campus partners, all those things. I think sometimes the communication also is really difficult. If you might reach out and say, hey, you're welcome to come to campus. You should come visit. We should work on a visit together. And they don't get back to you for like another month, and you're plan them to visit like 2 days before they email you, right? So that can be really annoying at times, for sure. And so in that aspect, I don't like my position right now. I also kind of wish, kind of selfishly, that it was more related to the environment. I was doing more environmental things because that's what I envisioned myself doing. But in terms of what I really like about my career and my job now, is that yes, I might not be doing what I thought I was going to do, even out of graduating college. But I really enjoy the people I work with, and I can really tell from what the work they do and the work I do and the people I interact with on campus that they make a really positive impact in people's lives, and students and the people around them, and they just make working fun. So I definitely have not had one day where I've dreaded going to work or been like, oh, maybe I'll just press snooze a couple more times. I really enjoy the people I work with, which is great. And I also really enjoy sharing my own personal stories and my experiences and things I do, and those of the students I work with and people I work with, and talking a lot, if you couldn't tell.
I will echo, there are too many emails to respond to in this world, so please think of that when you send your next email. But I understand it's something we all have to do. So also have empathy for others when they don't respond after one day, right? But most of my job I really, really love, and I think the biggest thing that is potentially different from what's been shared is I love to learn. And as somebody who studied Spanish and international studies, here I am hanging out with entomologists, they study bugs, and getting excited for the cicada palooza that's about to happen, right? So even if you don't like bugs or are weirded out by them, it's pretty cool that a bug crawls into the ground and knows when 17 years have passed and knows when to come back. Like, what? So June 8th, if you want to go to Lake Geneva, it's not too far from here. They're having a big event, and you can be a citizen scientist to help count how many cicadas you can find. So UW-Madison, look it up, Cicada Watch 2024. I just love learning. I love learning about what the dairy and food animal management humans are doing. I would have never seen myself interacting with students who are studying to be, pre-med, studying to be doctors, students studying to be pre-vet veterinarians. There's just a huge variety of things that CALS offers, and I love hearing from the students and the faculty. I learned that Holsteins each of their spots, right? The colors, the black and white, that's the cow that makes all the good milk for us. Each one is different, like a fingerprint, like a snowflake. I think that's cool. So now they can use AI, right, artificial intelligence, to identify the cow without having a tag in its ear, because the computer can be programmed to recognize, like, that cow looks different, right? So cool.
So, what advice would you give to someone wanting to work somehow with the environment?
I think be open to the variety of positions. I think a lot of times, again, back to what I was thinking working with the environment looked like, solar panels, maybe I think policy and government stuff, but really what do I do? Do I go out and make those things? Do I build them? What do I do? I didn't really know what the options were in the wide variety of things, and something I've learned as I've gotten older is there's so many different ways that you can work with the environment that might not be like the traditional, conservation or working as in the park service or things like that. I think, or the National Park Service, because I always thought I would go, like when I went to any like national parks or state parks and you see the park rangers, I'm like, that's working with the environment. That's what it looks like. But it looks like everyone here, a lot of the things you'll do, communication, business and marketing. One of the positions that I was really interested in, still kind of am, is kind of the marketing and selling of like renewable energy. And so working with like community members and companies to say, hey, look at this wind energy, that's great, this is why it's great, these are the 5 reasons you should buy it, things like that. Not necessarily the hard science, again, like that bench science, the lab science, out in the field work, but that's another element to it that I never thought about, the social science, the communications, marketing, business, things like that, and then also the sociology, and the cultural relevance of the environment. So educating people, working with policy, working with community groups and community members to, make the environment a better place. Maybe you might not be the one actually doing the thing, like doing the actual, cleanup or the work, but you're the one working with the community to help make sure that it happens, right? So a lot of different ways that you can make an impact, but not necessarily by being the kind of boots on the ground doing it, if that makes sense. Yeah, just kind of keeping your mind open and to all the different opportunities and the different ways that you can take your science knowledge and your science background, your interest in the environment, and apply it in like literally any way you want.
So as somebody who didn't study science and wasn't totally sure that science and the environment would be a career for me, I still always knew I liked the environment, and the way that I connected was through gardening. And the other way that I just kind of connected and explored was through reading. So my advice would be, whatever your interests are, whether you're here because you are interested in the environment or you're here because it was a nice place to sit instead of getting poured on, we welcome you. But I would say, explore the things you're interested in, and don't think that you have to have it all figured out today or even by the time you graduate from high school or college or, the job that you're in today, right? Like that might not be the job you're in for the rest of your life. It probably won't be. And the federal government actually says that 40% of the jobs that you all will hold haven't even been created yet. Right? There's so many things happening and so many ideas out there, but if there's something that interests you, my advice is like, go find out more about it, whether that's asking a question or going to an event or, my family didn't have a ton of money, so they sent me to the library. I learned a lot about a lot of things at the library, right? So it doesn't mean you have to get the hands-on experience. It doesn't mean you have to, learn what dendrology is, which I believe is being able to identify trees through their leaves and bark. Yeah, there's a class at UW-Madison. So even if you're not, even if you go to college and you're like, oh, I actually like this thing more than the environment, still keep the things you like in your day-to-day, right? Keep the things that you care about that kind of motivate you in your day-to-day. And if that's the environment, make sure you're doing something. That's my advice.
I would say, get out there, get involved, volunteer, see if it's, we have plenty of options of, invasive species removal, that kind of stuff. Get out there, get volunteer, get involved, see if you like to do that kind of work, and if you do, then pursue, I would say, some form of education. I know in my line we have a couple different options. I think Wisconsin is the first state to offer arboriculture as a licensed trade apprenticeship. So that's kind of cool. We first one in the country to have it. I know Madison College in Madison here, they offer a 1-year degree. I think it's in tree care technician program. There's another tech school up by Wisconsin Rapids that has, I think it's a 2-year program for tree care arboriculture. And obviously Stevens Point, and there's any kind of 4-year bachelor's degree in urban forestry. So I'd say, yeah, volunteer, see if you like the work itself. If you do, pursue education and get that knowledge base, and then you can go from there.
Yeah, and I kind of echo that. I think, like Ben was saying, your base study should be like what you're interested in, but then branch out and look at other classes, other things to study, just to kind of get an idea of what else is out there. So you kind of get an idea of what you want. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, and then just kind of spread it out. So take the extra classes or attend events like this. Obviously, you're doing that already. So just kind of the more knowledge and the more different things that you can see, the better. My program at Northeastern in Boston was a 5-year program where we did 2 years or 2 semesters of school, and then we worked for 2 semesters. So I had a lot of jobs over the course of those 5 years, and I got to try a lot of different things to see what I liked and what I didn't like. So go out there, get those opportunities, whether it be volunteering, there's a ton of stuff you can do, as he was saying, or also if you just kind of bounce around your first couple jobs, find things you like, do a summer here, a summer there. I spent a summer in a rubber factory where I was making rubber for telephone lines, that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it's just whatever you can do to get different exposures. The more you see out there, the better. And then kind of when you find what you want, get that base education, and then you'll learn more on the job in the first year than you kind of will for what you think you want to learn over your course of your college career or even here in high school. So once you get on the ground and actually doing it day in, day out, there's a million things that you couldn't cover on the professional education side, and you'd have to get the experience as you go. So, yeah, again, the more you can get, the more different things you can do, the more you can find out what you want.
Yeah, and to emphasize that, getting the opportunities is really great. Figuring out, keeping it in your life, whatever your interest in your life, whether that's the environment or not, doing all the things that you can is awesome. But I also want to kind of say, be patient and it will work out. You don't have, if you're not doing those things right now, that's okay. If you're not taking all the environmental classes you can, or thinking, oh, I want to go into this, career, do this major, whatever it may be, that's totally okay. And when I say, do whatever major kind of field of study you're interested in, if you don't know what that is, that's also okay. There's time, things don't have to happen, like that. It's not kind of linear. It's very much you can choose your own path and go at your own pace. I know I took 2 years off between high school and college, and things, I think, so far have been working out, right? So it really isn't, I don't want to kind of stress you out by saying do everything you can, take the classes you know you want to take, because you might not know what that is. And you might not know what's available to you or have the time or ability to do all the opportunities that there are for you. So also keep that in mind and be patient with yourself and know, yes, okay, I want to do all these things. I can do some of them. That's still okay. Do whatever you are capable of in this moment and whatever you feel like you want to do within that kind of realm of possibility. It'll work out.
So now I just want to open it up to a Q&A. Teachers, feel free to ask questions as well. So don't be scared. Carter?
So how did you go about finding and applying for the job you have right now? Did you have to apply, or was it?
Yeah, so the question was, how did you kind of go about finding and applying for the job that we have today? And what did that look like? Is that correct? Is that right? Cool. So for most of the positions I have held in my life, namely the bagel store and the research, The bagel store, I actually lived next door to the owner, which was kind of convenient. And I helped him one day, like mowed his lawn one day. He was like, you should come work for me. And I did for 10 years. So that was a great way to get a job through connections. But then all of the research I did, I kind of cold emailed folks. So I was like cold calling, but I just sent an email out to a research lab or a professor on campus and said, hey, my name's Ben. I'm really interested in, the environment and environmental policy, let's say, for one of my research positions. I'm wondering if you have any positions open in your research lab and are looking to hire students, or if I could work with you. And they got back to me, and then there wasn't an official kind of give me your resume, give me all these things, but there was kind of like send us a writing sample so we know that you can write, coherently and explain things in a good way. So there was some sort, it was very informal in that sense. For the job I currently have, it was a very kind of formal application process. I, went online to a job search site and looked up, what's available to me. Wasn't specifically about the environment, and then I saw that this was a position. I, applied, do your, like the resume, a cover letter, your references, and so kind of presenting myself on paper, and then there's an interview process where you do like a virtual interview nowadays, and then maybe you get invited back for a second interview, and that one was in person, right? So kind of looked around for most of the positions. I either did my own searching, so looking up plant pathology labs on campus or environmental policy labs / research, UW-Madison kind of thing. And then, went from there. But also in CALS, there's a career services team who work with students in the college to find what they're interested in. So they know a lot of the different job boards. They have connections to employers and to departments and things like that, and they can help students find those opportunities. I didn't use them. I really should have used them to help me find positions. I waited really late in my college career to do that, but that's how I found my position. Great question.
For most of my positions, it's pretty straightforward. Like Ben said, a lot of the job sites, a couple other things, a couple of jobs I've applied for that we've had, the basic interview process, but in my field too, there has been several occasions where I had to do a field portion of the interview where I had to actually show them that I could climb trees and safely operate chainsaws, that kind of stuff. So that's a little bit different in this field. I would say too, like I mentioned before, those volunteer experiences, use those as networking. Get to know people that are in the industry, and they might even have some internships available or some summer positions available. Just network if you can with people that are in the field.
Yeah, and I think I've done like temp agencies, Manpower. I've done it that way. I've done just cold looking at like Indeed.com. I think the position here at the school district was on WISC jobs, so like the state job thing where they list all of the opportunities. And I'll make a plug for, I think we all have WRS insurance and, or not insurance, but retirement. So, I mean, there's that type of stuff where if you find a sector you want to be in, and then you can kind of narrow down your search and look for sites like either on the UW or on the WISC jobs. I've also gotten jobs similar to Ben where my girlfriend at the time's father worked at a company, and do you want to come work for the company type thing. So a lot of networking, formally, informally, and then just searching. When I moved to Madison, I must have put out 50 resumes to companies, to jobs like on websites, and most of them obviously don't pan out, but you get a handful. When I was at Northeastern, we had a job placement for all of our work study type stuff. So I had a lot of experience doing interviews. I think they make you do, even if you get the first job, you still got to do another handful of interviews just for the experience. So, I mean, that's always good to do as well.
Yeah, Mateo?
What kind of opportunities or other things would you want would you recommend for people who don't want to necessarily go into environmental science as a job, but who want to support the environment and environmental action?
Yeah, so the question was kind of what opportunities, what jobs, what things should someone do if they kind of work kind of adjacent to the environment, maybe not work with environmental science, but kind of support sustainability and things like that. Is that correct? Cool. I would say, from my experience, I think working in a field or an interest, academic interest, career interest, whatever it may be, that might not necessarily be specifically the environment, but you can apply to the environment and use the skills you learn and say, okay, I'm interested in the environment personally, as like Ben, but maybe as a career, I want to go into politics. Definitely not, but something like that, right? Had a public policy certificate, so maybe I want to work with activism and kind of community organization and things like that. So like the research I did where I was analyzing public policy through an environmental lens, I wasn't, like I definitely didn't need to have an environmental science degree for that, right? I didn't need to necessarily say everything I want to do is about environmental science or the environment, but I care about it and I want to make an impact on it and support the people that can do the science and know those things. So I'm going to work on policy advocacy maybe, or community education. So I think they're sometimes called the soft sciences, social sciences, literature, education, things like that that are really, really important to work with. That's what I think I'm going to end up doing. I initially thought totally environmental science, totally want to design and build those solar panels. That's me. Not really. I want to educate a community on to why you should use solar. I want to sell the solar panels. I want to market them. I want to do those things that aren't, again, the hard sciences, as they call it, or the lab science. It's more that social science, that communication, things like that. So finding a parallel interest, I guess, if that makes sense, is something I would recommend.
I'd also suggest if your job is, totally different and totally distinct, that finding volunteer opportunities in your community. You can also curate your Instagram or your TikTok account to kind of follow the things that you have an interest in, right? So keeping those things, whether it's, like I mentioned before, you could be a citizen scientist, right? You could report what birds you've seen today in the community. I saw a cardinal on the way in, and yes, that's a joke. Thanks for laughing. And, I think just the things that you want to do, right? If you like gardening, maybe you have a community garden plot, or you volunteer with a CSA, Community Supported Agriculture. If you like the nature preserves, maybe you volunteer for a trail cleanup or a guided walk of a nature preserve, or, there's a lot of lakes and rivers and water around here. There's plenty of things happening to kind of keep you engaged, and then you'll meet other people who are also interested in that and kind of figure out ways that you kind of still keep it in your life.
Yeah, that kid in the back.
Question is, how do we think environmental jobs will change in the coming years? I think you could answer this a lot of different ways, so I'll maybe start with something I briefly mentioned before. I think that artificial intelligence is just going to become more and more of everybody's job, and hopefully be used in ways to help us. I think about precision farming and how we'll be able to reduce some of the backbreaking labor-intensive things, right? There's a lot of machinery out there now that will be able to maybe tell us where the fertilizer should go on the plant, or what part of the field should be fertilized, and reduce the amount of maybe, fertilizer or pesticides that we're using. There's also machinery that when you go down a row and you're planting seeds and you turn, right? Old machinery, you could maybe stop planting as you turn, but you're still going to probably waste some seeds or double plant as you go. But there's new machinery with technology that won't double plant. So you're also going to save the amount of seeds that you put in and reduce the impact on the soil and things of this nature. So I think that's just one example I can think of right away to kind of work smarter, not harder, but you're still going to have people to build, program, and understand how to use those new inventions, those new ideas.
Yeah, I think a lot of, like specifically what I do on the building automation is just going to be automated. So like right now I get in, I pull up the screens and I look and see what's going on. But I think it's already available where there are software programs that would do that for me and give me the summary of what I need to look at instead of me looking at 17 different pages to see all the different buildings. So I think everything as you get further down the line, it's going to be less manual entry and more just automation. So, I mean, a lot of software side stuff is going to be popping up as in replacing the mechanical stuff.
I think as Jean mentioned, what you say, 40% of jobs haven't even been created yet. So she mentioned that, and my mind went to oceanic forestry. I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there, maybe, I don't know. But I think a lot of, practices are going to have to adapt and just change with climate change. I heard about this thing, I can't recall the exact name of it. I want to say it's arboreal agriculture, where it's farming amongst the forest, planting crops in amongst the forest, and they were seeing almost, I think, a 30% increase in crop production when the crops were grown in amongst the forest. I think it's just going to be developing with the climate, that kind of stuff, and just working with it.
Yeah, I actually took a class on like the impact and science of climate change, and so we learned about how it's changing, what that looks like in terms of physics, chemistry, things like that, biology, but then also what the impacts might be. And a lot of the discussion was, okay, as we know, like some of the impacts we might know today, some we can't predict in the future, and as maybe the climate is changing and the environment around us is changing, we might have to shift, to new technologies, new techniques, and things like that for maybe specifically agriculture, but then also maintaining new technologies and all the different people that go and work in those spaces, and maybe going from adapting to mitigation to harm reduction and things like that. So I think that's going to change a lot. I also think that with more people kind of thinking about the climate and thinking about the environment and climate change, it's going to become a lot more of a both unknown and known issue. And what I mean by that is there's the scientists and the people who work with the environment who know what's happening. They know the impacts. They know the hard science and understand it. And then there's, the community and the rest of the world, people that live and interact with the environment but might not know what's going on. So kind of bridging that gap is also something, the education, the communication, a lot of things that are parallel to the environment now, or you might not even think could even be possibly related to the environment, will become it, I think, will become connected. So I think there should be a lot more of different types of positions that are not traditionally thought of as like environmental that will become it. That's a good question.
Mac?
So the question was, what inspired you to get into your career? Truthfully, it was to have a job to pay for my rent and my bills. But I think the big thing that's inspired me since then, and the reason I've kind of stayed in it and enjoyed it, is the people around me. And also knowing that what I do has an impact. And I used to think of what I do having an impact meant on the environment and climate change and things like that. But now I think of that as an impact on my community and the world around me and the people around me. So maybe I might not be right now, today, the person changing the world and solving climate change. But I am talking to the students and the people who want to continue working in those fields and showing them the opportunities and helping them find ways to do that instead of me. Don't get me wrong, I still want to fix climate change. So we're not done with that goal and that hope and that kind of inspiration, but I've kind of adapted over time to say, it doesn't have to be me or just me. I want to help everyone around me do that as well. And I think that's what I've enjoyed and has inspired me to continue doing what I do today.
I've always just enjoyed going for hikes out in the woods. So I initially went to Stevens Point in the forest recreation major, just kind of get into some kind of maybe national park situation. And then my advisor mentioned the urban forestry program, and I started doing a little research on it and took a couple courses specific to that major and really kind of just fell in love with that from there.
Yeah, I think I just wanted something mechanical. That was my goal coming out of college, something to tinker with, and I ended up in the HVAC world, and that kind of led me just seeing, I mean, the whole industry was shifting towards environmentally focused anyway. So I just kind of got into the controls and went down that path.
Yep.
So the question, if I heard you correct, is what can students do and U.S. students today kind of do to work on and impact climate change and all of those impacts? Is that correct? Cool. I think a lot of different things. One thing Jane mentioned earlier about like learning and getting involved and keeping it in your life is one thing. It might be individually. We actually talked a lot about this in a lot of our life science communications classes about, you know, an individual versus a kind of collective action. So do I bike to school? Do I, you know, bike to work? Do I, you know, eat less red meat and, you know, only organically grown things and be more conscious about my consumption? Or do I kind of, is that worth it? Is that relevant? Is it really just the job of the places producing the beef and the places, you know, above us that are having the actual impact? Is it their job? And so the debate between who's kind of to blame and whose job is it to fix it, I think it's shared. I think as an individual, I don't own a car. I bike or bus or walk pretty much everywhere. And so that's something I do personally for that. I try to avoid red meat when possible, but I also really like Culver's, so it's not perfect. And then also just kind of volunteering, getting involved in the community. If there's a botanical garden or a nature preserve that you enjoy, see if they need help cleaning up or with work and things like that. So I think that getting involved is a big thing, but then also understanding that there are things you can do as an individual every day that help, but it's also not, I want to say, your job to fix it, like by the things you do in your day-to-day, if that makes sense. It's okay if you have a car. It's okay if you eat red meat. It's really kind of understanding that everyone, it's a really big systemic thing, so the little things you do are going to make an impact and be helpful, but it's not on you to kind of fix everything, if that makes sense.
I was thinking, if you're interested in becoming a politician and you already care about the environment, then that would be awesome. We need more politicians and leaders and communities who care about the environment and understand and can speak to that. As you folks will hopefully be able to vote when you're 18 and older, feel free, even if you're not able to vote yet, to contact folks who are making decisions in the community. And not always, you know, complaining about things, but thanking them and appreciating them when they're making a plan that makes sense and that you think will impact us positively, right? If we think that the city of Sun Prairie is really helping us out by planting more trees, I bet they don't get a lot of thank yous for that or a lot of appreciation for that. But by making your voice heard, that will gain some power too. That will gain some traction, right? For folks like Brandon to be able to say, hey, the community did reach out and they did care about this. They liked what we were doing, right? Those kind of actions are going to matter too. So, you know, if this is important to you, maybe take 5 minutes a week to send a quick email or, you know, sign a petition or say thank you to the different folks in the community who are making a positive impact.
Oh, yeah, Leanne.
Question was, do you think our job is stressful in terms of studying and working with the environment at the same time? It's a great question. I think it's stressful. My job is stressful at times for maybe, I would say, normal reasons that every job might be stressful for. You have a really busy week. You have a lot of, in my case, for one of my examples, I have, for example, our spring break, our UW-Madison spring break kind of went along with a lot of spring breaks for high schools. So we had the most people coming to visit us, but the fewest people that could host them and show them around. So that was stressful, kind of figuring that out. Emails can get stressful. Talking to new people can be very stressful. Having to kind of put yourself out there at times and, talk to, in some cases for me, like someone who isn't thinking about college and saying, okay, here are some reasons you could think about college and why it might be beneficial to you. And I think that kind of goes along with the environment. There's a lot of people that in your day-to-day, and that maybe it's a community member who is really against a project that you're doing because they don't think it's the right way to spend the money or things like that. And so that can definitely be stressful. And a lot of things take a lot of time, I think. So maybe not so much stressful, but frustrating is, people don't respond to your communications, or a program has to go through a lot of different approvals and all these different things that I think having the patience is also really helpful as well. And something that I am still learning and will forever be learning is to understand that.
For me, some stressors that I've encountered recently, last year we had kind of a bit of a drought, so it really stressed a lot of our trees out, and I foresee that happening more often. And climate change is pushing a lot of our species tree species that have been native to the area further north, so we're going to lose some of the species that we've been accustomed to having around for longer, but we will gain some southern species up here. So it's a give and take, but it's definitely, I don't know, it's a gray future for forestry, so it's a little bit stressful.
And I think I've worked in the private sector for companies that were more focused on making money. So if I'm running a project in Chicago, it's a mechanical thing, and we're dealing with vendors, trying to make sure everything's on time. Like, that's a different kind of stress now, working with the school district. I have the opportunities where I can do my learning. Part of my job is there is an expectation that I'm keeping up on what's going on in the industry, what's new, and what we can do. So that's kind of built into my job now. So for me, where I'm at now, and even when I was with the state before, it's a slower pace. So I think some people strive in that stressful project management, and if that's what you like and that's what kind of keeps you going, then that's great. But then just finding the right fit where you're at a job that has that stress level that you can, enough to keep you going, to push you, but lets you do and lets you not be stressed out all the time.
And I guess one more thing, I also kind of, like I mentioned earlier, I want to have an impact in what I do as a career and as a job. I wanted that to have an impact specifically on the environment. And so I think kind of taking a step back and looking at any job as maybe it's not the impact I envisioned, but there is an impact to it. So I was definitely spent a lot of time being very stressed out about, I really only want to work in a place where I think I'm having an impact. And that was a kind of a very linear idea and kind of tunnel visioned idea of what impact was, or a good impact was. And so I think what helped me relieve a lot of that stress and was kind of exploring the different options and saying, oh, there's a lot of different ways I can work with the environment or work with plants and sustainability, but and that are different than what I thought it was. And that definitely kind of gave me a big sigh of relief. For sure.
I think we have time for like one more question. Anybody want to close it out? Yeah, Julia.
There's a lot of like, I feel like negativity and negative outlook on what the environment's gonna look like in the next 20 years. So I'm just wondering, like, how do you stay hopeful about where we're going?
I stay hopeful just with a lot of the developments in kind of research in my field, new practices, new species of trees they're creating. I mean, they're reintroducing elms. Back in the 70s, there was a big outbreak of Dutch elm disease that just wiped out a lot of just city streets full of American elms. I've been planting American elm varieties for the last 5 years that are highly resistant to the Dutch elm disease. So it's just that scientific advancement and the evolution of just trees. That's why I stay hopeful.
Yeah, I think the advancement of technology is a big way that in terms of maybe not I'm working on it, but others is definitely really helpful. But then I'm also inspired by seeing people like yourself and people that are here at this event today and that are interested in the environment. Yes, maybe it's like there's a lot of doom and gloom and everyone's kind of like scared, and I think in some cases rightfully so, but there's also a lot of hope and a lot of kind of drive and inspiration to make a difference and to work with developing and helping the evolution of resistant tree species, and with working with AI to help figure out better ways to combat CO2 emissions, right? That definitely helps, knowing that I'm not alone in that goal and that hope that things will be improved and worked upon. And seeing all of the other people that also want to do that is also really helpful for me.
And I mean, for me in the district, Sun Prairie is very forward on their geothermal, and we have very efficient buildings, and every one we build is better than the last one. So there's just, there are problems and there are very inefficient buildings out there, but I get to work with the more efficient ones, and everything that we do, I think, is helping. And then when I can come to a place like this, or I can go to a presentation and kind of share out, I think that that's making a positive impact, and we're getting more people comfortable with the idea of geothermal or whatever the next technology is. So we're trending in the right direction as far as the building efficiency, at least.
I'll just add quickly that the fact that there's an advanced placement environmental sciences course, that's not something that existed when I was in high school. That there are teachers who care about the environment. And I'm also inspired by people like Ashton, who set something like this up. So snaps for Ashton.
I just want to quickly, I know everyone's leaving, but thank you guys for coming, and thank you so much to our speakers, and thanks to Mr. Klain.
We have some giveaways for people who asked questions, or if people are interested in UW-Madison or CALS, we have some info about our majors and info about applying to UW. No pressure.
Yeah, come get free stuff.